Verse 3 of chapter 19 of Proverbs, just to kind of go over a couple of the high points of the lesson last week. In verse 3, Solomon's basically telling us that, if by yielding to our own follies and sorrows and things like that have come our way because of that, don't blame others for our troubles. We're the ones that caused it. So many times we want to blame somebody else for the things that happened to us that we could have prevented. And so he warns us against that. In verse 4, we talked about the wealthy guy. Wealthy people have lots of friends, don't they, usually? That's because maybe sometimes that's all people are interested in is their money. We gave the good example of the prodigal son. When he had all his riches and stuff, he had lots of friends. But when he ran out of money, so did his friends. Verse 6 is an interesting proverb in that all of us have experienced it whenever we have made a donation to some organization, college or hospital or something like that. We get bombarded in our mailboxes with more and more requests to give. Because it says in verse 6, every man is a friend to one who gives gifts. And that's true in many ways. Verses 4 through 9 really dealt with being fair and generous with others. When we get into verse 10, Solomon says, if prosperity does come, don't be like a fool and become high-minded and have that haughty behavior. Bottom line here is to use wisdom to guide and control our thoughts. Are there any questions, kind of what we talked about so far last week in the way of review? Okay, we're going to begin this morning in verse 19 of chapter 19 of Proverbs. Solomon writes, a man of great wrath will suffer punishment. If you deliver him, you will have to do it again. Now, verse 19 through the rest of the end of this chapter deal with having the proper attitude toward yourself with regards to maybe your personal habits. Verse 19, Solomon says, a man who can't control his anger must what? Pay the penalty. Pay the price. How many times do we see people who have lost their temper and gone off and done something that they regret and they get trouble for it? They go to jail for it. Domestic fights and abuse lots of times comes from people who get angry and can't control that anger. They have to go to anger management. What are some of the things that we can do to control our anger? Pray. Outstanding. Count to 10. Go outside and walk around for a while. There you go. There you go. Matt, you have more? Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever written something in anger? My advice to you, if you do that, don't mail it, don't send it. Okay, wait till the next day and then reread it when you've calmed down. Most of the time, you'll change what you wrote. Yeah. Any other thoughts or comments on that? What does Solomon say you will have to do if you try and intercede or make excuses for this man? You got to do it again. He won't learn. He won't learn. Verse 20. Listen to counsel and receive instruction, that you may be wise in your latter days. It's an interesting proverb here because there's a contrast between two periods of time in a man's life. The earlier part, which has probably been undisciplined, and that which is in the future, as it says here, listen to counsel and receive instruction that you may be wise in your latter days. ESV translates it, listen to advice and accept instruction that you may gain wisdom in the future. And I like that. Question. We've all known people like this. A know-it-all. What does a know-it-all really prove? He knows nothing, his ignorance in the long run, absolutely. Verse 21. There are many plans in a man's heart. Nevertheless, the Lord's counsel that will stand. Solomon says here that the plans made by man are always changing. Is that true? Why is that true? Huh? They're not perfect? Yep. Circumstances. Let me ask you this. Do you think today like you did 20, 30, 50 years ago? Yeah, fortunately, no. Yeah. Things change. We get influenced by lots of different outside things that have an effect on how we think and how we deal with problems. And it's good that we don't. In the run of a lifetime, a man hears all kinds of philosophies and all kinds of theories and teaching. But here Solomon says that the wisdom of God's plan is the one that will stand. Will not change. And that's the one we need to try and figure out. Any thoughts or comments on that? Geraldine? Absolutely. We change in our Christianity and our walk. The older we get, the more mature we get, the better we understand. Yeah, no, good point. Good point there. Others? Okay. Right. Yeah, we can't remain a babe. We have to grow. We're told to do that. Good point. Okay, moving on. Remember what Solomon said in regard to this last proverb. Back in chapter 14 and 12, there is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. Okay? It changes. Verse 22 and 23 kind of go together. What is desired in a man is kindness, and a poor man is better than a liar. The fear of the Lord leads to life, and he who has it will abide in satisfaction. He will not be visited with evil. Fear the Lord, and you will be able to sleep satisfied, untouched by evil, according to the New American Standard Version. For example, compare the poor man versus the liar in verse 22. A poor righteous man who desires to do kindness is far better than a rich liar who makes promises but never fulfills them. The first one can sleep satisfied. The latter cannot find peace or comfort or a clear conscience of any kind. Any thoughts on that? Okay, verse 24. A slothful man buries his hand in the bowl and will not so much as bring it to his mouth again. I laugh at this because this verse pictures the extreme, and to me shows that Solomon had a sense of humor. When you think about it, Solomon says, one can be so lazy that even the slightest labor of feeding himself is more than he is willing to do. How ridiculous is that? And we've studied and talked about being lazy and the sluggard, and we'll see more of it as we go on. But that's the extreme. Verse 25. Strike a scoffer, and the simple will become wary. Reprove one who has understanding, and he will discern knowledge. Solomon here makes the point that if you strike a scoffer, or some translations will say scorner, that person makes no changes. You can't even beat it into him. He is hardened by rebellion. But the simple, naive, may benefit by the warning. I like the ESV where it says, reprove a man of understanding, and he will gain knowledge. I think this is a very true statement. Thoughts or comments? Moving on to verse 26 and 27. He who mistreats his father and chases away his mother is a son who causes shame and brings reproach. Verse 27, cease listening to instruction, my son, and you will stray from the words of knowledge. Solomon says, a son who has such disrespect for his parents that he would assault his father and drive his mother away is a shameful and disgraceful son. I don't think anybody could argue with that. What about a son who will just not listen to his parents? He too is a fool, for he will stray away from the words of knowledge. You know, we all go through a rebellious time in our lives, I guess. And, you know, hopefully it doesn't last very long and you learn. And we can, in our own lives, think back to things that maybe with our parents that we shouldn't have done. And you learn from it. Other comments or thoughts? Okay. Moving on to verse 28. And 29 actually go together. A disreputable witness scorns justice, and the mouth of the wicked devours iniquity. Judgments are prepared for scoffers, and beatings for the back of fools. We talked about this before. Why do we have laws? To prevent chaos. Yeah, laws are established for the justice and the order in society. Can you imagine if we didn't have any traffic laws? We wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here. The accidents. Yeah, it'd be crazy. Yeah. And who had the biggest car? Yeah, absolutely. Solomon makes a point, a disreputable or worthless witness, one who disrespects the law, is willingly going to perjure himself. He is compared to a man who devours iniquity or evil, eats it up. He goes on to say in verse 29, men may scoff at the judgments of God and man, but they can be certain that punishment awaits. We know that in 2 Corinthians 5 and 10, where it says, Paul wrote, we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ to give an account of what we've done, both good and bad, in the body. Any questions or additional comments on chapter 19? Okay, chapter 20. Actually, in these next three chapters of Proverbs, 20, 21, and 22, we're going to study and discuss how to have a good name. What does it mean to have a good name? Honor. If you have a good name, okay. Trust, reputation, respect. A good name has no reference either about how to pronounce it or to spell it. Now, I'm going to put Jason on the spot. Some of us, or maybe all of us, know a young man who goes to church in Manteca. His name is Brahmo. What is Brahmo's full name, Jason? Say that 10 times. Okay? Probably why he goes by Brahmo. Best man at Patricia's and my wedding, his name was Chip Burns. But his given name was Willoughby Shackelford Marion Burns. He probably grew up with a lot of fights on his hands. So, his name It's not how you pronounce it. It's not how many letters are in it. But it's the character and the credibility represented by the name. Does that make sense? If your word is worthless and people cannot believe in you, it really doesn't matter how well you say something. Okay? For example, look at some of our politicians today. They speak well, but not always the truth. Thoughts or comments? If your character is flawed so that people cannot respect you, then it matters not how much you accomplish or accumulate in this life. It truly doesn't. In learning from Proverbs how to lead a successful life, this lesson is as important as any because it teaches how to build character and credibility. Two things are utmost important in your life. Any thoughts or comments on the introduction there for... Yes, Irene. Yeah. That's right. Absolutely truth. Absolute truth. Wayne. Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. I hadn't thought about that, but you do. If you do something that gives the false sense of who you're really not, what are people going to believe? You believe what you see and not what you hear sometimes. So we have to be real careful. Other comments? Okay. Yes, Patricia, and then Jason. Yeah. Yeah. A man builds 1,000 bridges. He's known as a bridge builder. Tells one lie, he's a liar. Jason. Oh, Serena, I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Jason. Okay. Mary. Sure does. You know. Yeah. 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 No, that's true. I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, you got to be, and there's some weird names nowadays out there, Yeah, yeah, boy named Sue. He's in for a long, hard fight. Uh, Daniel. Yeah, yeah, good point. Good point. Any other comments? Serena, I apologize. Jason had his arm around you, which is nice, and I saw a hand go up, and I thought it was his hand. Okay, all of chapter 20. This is kind of interesting. All of chapter 20, verses 1 through 30, deal with and warn us to abstain from vices that destroy your character. And vices, I'm not talking about the one that's spelled V-I-S-E-S, but V-I-C-E-S. So what is a vice? Spelled V-I-C-E. A bad habit, bad behavior, struggles, certain things, yeah, could be things we shouldn't do. Addiction can be alcohol, drugs, and we're going to talk about alcohol in the very first verse of chapter 20. A crutch. We use it as a crutch, huh? Yeah, that happens a lot. Can be immoral, wicked behavior as a vice. We need to get through the day. Lots of things that can happen. Let's read verse 1. Solomon writes, "Wine is a mocker. Intoxicating drink arouses brawling. And whoever is led astray by it is not wise." Now, there are a number of translations for this second line of the verse that I like. I read from the New King James Version, which says, "Intoxicating drink arouses brawling." The King James says, "Strong drink is raging." The ESV says, "Strong drink is a brawler." And then the NIV says, "Beer is a brawler." What? Not, yeah, it's just not beer. What picture is painted here when you read any of those translations? What does drinking do? I mean, physiologically. Yeah, it affects the nervous system. Kills brain cells. You ever met a mean drunk? Many times, yeah. Many times. Yeah. We had a guy in our squadron, I won't name his name, and one of the nicest guys you ever met. But when he drank, he went crazy. And in fact, it nearly got him killed one time because he'd been drinking and got into a fight and left in his Corvette up Interstate 5 north of Dana Point, Southern California, doing over 120 miles an hour. Ran off the roads, flipped it, burst into flames. And if it wasn't for the guy, the truck driver, that he nearly ran off the road, pulled over and pulled his sorry you-know-what out, he'd been dead. He was in intensive care for weeks. I hope so. I hope so. I got a call on a Sunday morning from our commanding officer, Walter House, and he said, told me what had happened. And he said, "I don't think Hank's going to make it." And he said, "You're going to be the CACO, which is the Casualty Assistance Officer, when somebody passes away." Sad, sad situation. It changes behavior. And most of the time, not for the good. You know, you ever heard the term alcohol is liquid courage in a bottle? Yeah. People will do all sorts of stupid things once they start that drinking process. All the translations start the same way in verse 1. Wine is a mocker. Wine is a mocker because it makes false promises. It's sweet to the taste. Okay, has flavor. Still alcohol. It's relaxing to the nervous system. People come home stressed, pour that drink. Now, well, okay, and it's used for medicinal purposes. Look what Paul told Timothy. 1 Timothy 5:23. He says, stop drinking water. Have a little wine for your stomach. Now, does that mean Timothy was never supposed to drink water again? No. But what Paul was saying is, stop being a teetotaler. Have a drink for your stomach for medicinal purposes. Now, we got to understand something. Wine back then, according to my research, was a lot different in alcohol content. Back in biblical days, it was anywhere based upon almost. It's like 4 to 5%. We talk about good wine and bad wine. You may remember that, I can't remember how many chapters ago it was, that we talked about good wine was actually diluted with water. Spices were added to it to make it more flavorful, more appealing. Obviously less alcoholic, okay? Modern day wines have an alcohol content of around 18%. Okay? So these things, you got to understand about alcohol when it's used in the Bible. Did Jesus use wine? Yeah. Wayne. Right. Now, I will tell you that nowhere in my study, and please, if someone knows, educate me, I cannot find in the Bible where it says, thou shalt not drink alcohol. Can't find it. Yes. Now, there's numerous warnings about drinking to excess. Yeah, Jason, go ahead. Yes. Well, I'm not saying that you should drink, even one drink. But people, I mean, this is a sensitive, touchy subject in the church. You know, we have people in the Lord's body that have a drink now and then. Okay, I guess my point would be why? Why? I mean, one leads to what? Two, two leads to four. You know, and you know, you see the signs on the freeway all the time. Buzz driving is drunk driving. Yeah. If you take a little wine for the body, and Wayne brings out a good point, back then they didn't have the medicines that we have today. So even that excuse is a little bit on flimsy side. Why would you want to? I agree. But it's a lot of people will talk about in John chapter 2, 1 through 11, where Jesus turned the water into wine. Jason. Yeah. And I'm going to go back to what Wayne said earlier about reputation and character. If I'm sitting in a restaurant and I have a glass of wine with my dinner, one, just one, and somebody sees me, what are people going to think? He goes to church, woo, drinking up. Wayne. Wine as far as the alcohol side of it. Yeah. Yeah. Not today, maybe tomorrow.
We have to be very, very sensitive to that. That's why we use grape juice and not wine in the Lord's church when we serve the Lord's Supper. Now, I've never been in Italy, but I have been stationed in cultures that do use wine with meals. I have never been in an assembly of a church, however, where they use wine, even if their culture uses it in the culture. And I think it may have something to do with that too. But also we should understand that to place that kind of a situation before the Lord's church, a Christian is actually has Paul talks in 1 Corinthians, don't be an obstacle or be a stumbling block.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll find that a little bit later in my notes here. Got a lot of hands. Galen. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, if you don't ever take the first one, you don't have to worry about the second one. Toby, and then back in the back. Sure. Yeah. Virgil? Hey, well, in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they both talk about the Lord, the fruit of the vine. Okay, now, wine can be alcohol, it can be non-alcohol. Wine simply means, comes from the Greek word ampelos, Ampelos, I think, the way you spell it, and it means W-E-I-N, which is sounded vine, which we get our root word vine. Okay, it's fruit of the vine. Now, we typically associate that with grapes. Okay, let me ask a question. Tomatoes, are they a fruit or vegetable? Fruit. How about cucumbers? Fruit. Okay, watermelons, fruit. They come from vines. Fruit of the vine. How come we can't use watermelon juice in our cups up here? Jason, I'll get to that answer in a minute. Right. Yeah, exactly. And actually, there's some commentators, I don't know, we're running out of time. When Jesus turned the water into wine, simply said he just made fresh grape juice. You know, why would Jesus purposely contribute strong alcohol for people to partake of and get sin? Tom? Yeah. Yeah. Wayne Jackson did an article in 2000. I haven't had a chance to read it. Was the Lord's Supper, original Lord's Supper that Jesus instituted, was it fermented or unfermented wine? Maybe interesting read. I haven't read it yet. I hadn't had a chance to read it yet. But, yes, Norma. Yeah. Yeah. Well, think about, I mean, in the Old West, they used to give liquor to the Indians to make them do what? Go crazy and uprise, you know? It just serves no purpose. Yes. Right. Right. It will. It won't take long. It won't take long. Our time is up. Oh, go ahead, Daniel. I want to get you. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Been a wonderful audience. We'll pick it up. Before we leave, I just want to make sure everybody understands. I mean, I'm not in any way promoting it's okay to drink, okay? My point is, why even start? Thank you.